City of Stevens Point Finance Committee meeting, recorded November 12, 2024.
Okay, we'll call this meeting to order, a meeting of the Finance Committee. Carrie, could you take roll, please? There's a Mandy.
Or Marcy?
Marcy.
Marcy.
Marcy, I get confused. Okay. All right, Marcy.
Christensen.
I am here.
Morrow.
Here.
Shuda.
Here.
Keemer. Here. Broderick. Here.
All right, we definitely have a quorum. First item on our agenda after roll call will be the update on our 2024 general obligation borrowing. Comptroller.
Yes, so as you may remember, back in October, we passed a parameters resolution that basically allows us to execute the borrowing as long as it falls within certain parameters. One of those parameters is the interest rate. So as long as the interest rate is no more than 3.5%, we're allowed to execute the borrowing. The sale is scheduled for tomorrow. Unfortunately, interest rates have gone up from when we adopted the additional parameters resolution to today. So we'll see what happens. There's no action that's needed right now, but I just wanted to kind of put the committee on notice that, depending on what happens tomorrow, it's looking pretty tight in terms of the interest rate. So if that occurs, then we'll need to look at some other strategies. And basically, my suggestion would be if the sale doesn't go through, because the interest rate is too high, that we adopt another parameters resolution. It would have to be at a higher interest rate, but I'd also want to make it so that we can refinance it earlier, because with municipal bonds, you can't always refinance them whenever you want. It's a specific term of the bond known as a call provision. So I definitely think if we end up getting into the market here in a higher interest rate environment, then being able to refinance that when hopefully rates come down is really important. So that's kind of the way I'm thinking about it in terms of a contingency strategy just in case the borrowing doesn't go through, but of course open to any discussion or any other thoughts on that.
Okay, any questions from the committee? It's a non-action item, so, okay.
I guess, and maybe I'm not totally understanding this correctly, but if the bond sale does not go through tomorrow, if the interest rates that are quoted are beyond the parameters that have been approved, would there be a follow-up bond sale with new parameters, and when would that be?
Yes, so we could either, if interest rates go down, we could try the same sale again, or we'd have to basically enter into another parameters resolution, and then after we've adopted that parameters resolution, then we'd conduct the sale. Okay. As far as the exact timing, I'm not sure. Okay. But, we are we do need to get this closed by the end of the year, so the clock really isn't on our side on this one, so we'll have to, keep it moving.
Would setting new parameters at council next week be an option, or would this need to go back to Finance Committee next month?
Yeah, my intention would be that we would set new parameters at council next week so that we keep moving so that we can get everything finalized before the end of the year.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
And it has gone through committee once, so we could readdress it if needed. Mm-hmm. And that was just an update, so no action required on that. Any other questions or comments from the committee? Otherwise, we'll move on. Our next item on our budget, discussion and possible action on the approval of adding 9 additional firefighter paramedic positions to the fire department and incorporating the relevant changes in the 2025 operating budget.
Yes, so I think as most of you probably are aware, the referendum did pass. So this action item would just be formally approving the addition of the 9 additional firefighter paramedic positions to the fire department and then incorporating that in the 2025 operating budget.
Chief Moody, do you have anything you'd like to bring up, or it's in our hands?
It's in your hands.
All right. Committee, what are your wishes?
I'll move approval of adding the 9 additional firefighters.
Okay. I'll second it.
Motion by Kamer and Alder Morrow seconds. Comments, questions, thoughts?
Glad to see that the people of Stevens Point are also in support and affirmed this through referendum, so I'm happy to see it come for final approval today. I will be supporting.
congratulations to the IAFF and the department.
Congratulations in order. Just a question off the top. I know we won't hold you to this, but reduction in overtime. Knowing you, I'm sure you have an idea what that would be.
We have already looked at that, and I can pull that number right off the top of my head. In 2022, prior to even approaching this referendum, we had 539 overtime shifts, not 539 hours, 539 overtime shifts that calendar year. And we've already been able to look at what that's going to look like potentially moving forward. Now, that won't take effect till 2026 if you're looking at a time frame. We're going to start the application process right after the first of the year, and once the positions are funded. We're looking at potentially having half of those 9 employees started in May and onboarded through an academy somewhere between March, April, May, getting them out on the line serving the community after Memorial Day. The second academy class going through the academy in September of next year, and having the department back to fully staffed by 1/1 of 26. So I'm sorry it took a little bit to get to your answer, but I wanted to make sure you understood our time frame. Once 1/1/26 hits and we're fully staffed at that point, we will be looking at implementing an increase in our minimum staffings, going from 10 to 11 like we discussed, and what I was basically explaining to the community during all of our open forums, having a minimum of 3 on every heavy piece within the city on our fire apparatuses. And when we look at that actual overtime, we're looking at potentially somewhere between a quarter and a third of the overtime that we're spending right now in a savings for the city of Stevens Point. But now we won't see that until potentially 2026 if we're on the time frame that I've explained this evening.
Okay.
Fair enough.
Chief, you addressed my question because I was going to ask what kind of a time frame you're looking at for onboarding, and so thank you for sharing that with us as well.
And so everyone knows, we actually started that process today. We actually went to Mid-State Technical College and participated in one of their showcases when it came to fire and EMS, and have already offered out some internships with the department. And of course, as many know, we do look at our interns as potential candidates moving forward in the spring process. So once again, that's kind of where we're at. I would like to thank everyone, not only on the Finance Committee, but the Common Council in a whole, for all of their support through this process. I know it's been a long endeavor. It's been public since February of this past year, and I know we've been working on it way before that. And I just wanted to say again a sincere thank you to all of you for the support and standing behind the fire department, and all the community members for their vote last week. It really it shows when the numbers came in. So again,
Absolutely.
Thank you to everyone.
All right, and yep, my congratulations as well. And
you.
please express our congratulations to the rest of your group that put in so much time and effort in making that successful.
I will, but I told them all now the real work actually starts to fill those
Absolutely.
positions and get those 9 new firefighter paramedics spun up to speed here in the city.
Anyone else on the committee? Otherwise, we have a motion in front of us. All in favor of the motion of adding those 9 additional firefighter and paramedics, and along with the changes that need to come with that, would signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. And opposed would be no. That passes. Our next item on the agenda, we move to consideration of a Claim-USAA,
Number 4.
operating budget first. Consideration of the 2025 operating budget, comptroller.
Yes, so we presented the operating budget on October 28th. Since then, there have been a few changes. One is the one we just discussed with the referendum, adding the 9 additional firefighter paramedics. And then we also had some changes with open enrollment for health insurance, and sometimes there's savings there. Sometimes it costs us more money. It just depends on what our employees do in terms of changing health insurance coverage, either adding coverage, removing coverage. This year, the budget impact was $25,606. So had to kind of put my thinking cap on here at the last minute to say, okay, where can we find that money? Basically, I'm proposing to reduce contingency by $5,606 from what was originally proposed in October. And then also, we had proposed to increase the transfer from the general fund to the sick leave trust fund. That had been proposed to increase by $20,000 in order to account for increases in wages, and which also increased that liability. But given this budgetary challenge, I'm proposing to instead back that $20,000 off so that it would remain flat from 2024 to 2025. That's not ideal because that is something that, we do want to make sure that we're getting as close to fully funding that liability as we can. But it's, as I described in the memo, the best bad idea that I have to get us through another year. And then the hope would be, moving forward, maybe in the 2026 budget, we can make up for that to an extent. So the list of proposed changes is attached. We might have a few other technical changes before council, just depending on how things go.
Okay. Committee, what are your wishes?
Motion to approve.
We have a motion to approve by Morrow. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Alder Broderick. Questions, comments? I know your solution isn't ideal, but like you said, it's probably the best of the bad ideas. You're right, you never know for sure until the last second of exactly what everybody's going to do, and it does impact your insurance costs. So that is almost impossible to anticipate exactly. So I think keeping, instead of increasing that transfer, and that'll stay flat, and we'll reduce contingency by $5,600 about, and we'll move on. Any other comments or questions? Otherwise, we'll take a vote. All in favor of approving the budget as presented would signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, and opposed would be no. That passes unanimously. Now, we'll get to item number 5, consideration of a Claim-USAA casualty insurance company. Driver collided with a city-owned vehicle. Comptroller.
Yes, so basically the situation is we had a city-owned vehicle that was waiting to pull out from one of the side streets and to turn. We also had somebody who was waiting to back out of her driveway, and once the traffic cleared, the city vehicle pulled out, and then the driver who was waiting to back out of her driveway didn't see our city vehicle and backed into it. So there was a collision that took place. We got a claim from the driver's insurance company basically trying to say that it was our fault. We submitted it to our insurance company. They do not agree that it's our fault. They said that really the responsibility really is more so on the person who's backing up as opposed to our vehicle. So I'd also note that in the police report, no one was cited. So, usually if somebody does something, egregious to cause an accident, that person will get a citation from the police, which is a fine that they have to pay, which really kind of establishes liability. In this case, neither driver was cited. So the fact that our driver wasn't cited, I think, supports our case that this claim should be denied.
Okay. I noticed our city attorney entered the room. Would you like to speak to this? No? Okay. Questions from the committee? Committee, what's your wishes so we can discuss this and act on it?
I'll move denial of the claim.
Okay, we have a move to deny the claim by Alder Keemer.
I second.
There's a second by Alder Morrow. Comments, questions? Seems fairly straightforward. Any comments or questions from the audience? Okay, hearing none, we'll take a vote. All of those in favor of denying the claim would signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. And opposed would be no. And that passes unanimously. Next on our agenda is item number 6. We have a consideration of a claim from Lauren Lutz and tripped and fell on curb. Comptroller?
Yes, so this happened on Vincent Street, which was under construction at the time. And basically what happened is there was only one layer of asphalt down, so there wasn't the second layer of asphalt that was applied to the road yet. So for that reason, the curb was not flush with the pavement, and unfortunately, the resident did trip over that and fell and did sustain some injuries. Did submit it to our insurance company. Basically, they said that they believe that the city was, meeting the duty of reasonable care, that, at times we do have streets that are under construction, and you're not always going to have that curb flush with the pavement while it's being resurfaced or while it's under construction. So the recommendation is to deny the claim.
Okay. Committee, what's your wishes?
Is the plaintiff here?
I don't think so. Doesn't appear so.
Okay. Move to deny the claim?
There's a move to deny the claim by Alder Morrow. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Alder Broderick. Comments, questions?
No matter that it was under construction by a third-party contractor, seems very relevant here.
Yes, so and that's another angle that, basically, at worst case scenario, we would refer it to the contractor. So, because it really shouldn't be our liability regardless. It should be the liability of the contractor.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Any from the audience? Okay, hearing none, we'll take a vote. A vote to deny the claim would, you could vote for that by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. And opposed would be no. So that claim is denied. That brings us to our next item on the agenda, number 7, sewer backup in basement. Comptroller.
Yes, so this happened on Maria Drive. There were actually 2 properties that were affected by this backup, and basically it was under construction at the time. So the claim originally went to the contractor. Basically, due to the construction, there was a backup in the basement, and we did lean on the contractor a little bit to say, hey, can you help these 2 claimants out? They did make an offer to both of these claimants. However, it wasn't for the full amount. So right now, my understanding is that the claimants are still negotiating with the contractor. And at this point, they also did file a claim with the city, basically, when they didn't get a positive response from the contractor. But at this point, the recommendation from the city side is to deny the claim, because this is really an issue between the contractor and the residents.
Okay. You've heard the recommendation. Committee, what are your wishes?
Is the official person here?
Oh, okay.
Yep, they both are. This one will be for Phyllis Carlson, the first one.
Did anyone want to speak?
I don't know what else to say there, because I have already
Okay.
sent to the city.
Okay.
and their pictures and
Okay.
and working with the contractors, not helping. They offered less than half. They didn't even cover the costs of what it took to clean and
Right.
replace stuff.
It'd be helpful if you come to the podium, to the lecterns, so people, especially the people online, will be able to hear your comments too, please.
We have been going back and forth with the contractor, and I had gotten a offer about 3 weeks ago, and it was for even less than half, and I wasn't even charging them the hours that I worked without hiring Puro Clean, because this basement had to get cleaned up before it got so hot. And they're not cooperative, and they want to sign an NDA.
Okay.
They're just not willing to work with us.
Okay.
And we've had no problem with water in our basements until that.
No, and so that makes it pretty obvious that it was as a result of the construction, so. Any other comments or questions from the committee?
Is there anything that the city, Mr. Logan's here, okay.
You're starting to ask a question now.
Yeah, I was going to say if there's anything else that the city would be able to do to lean on the contractor.
So it's a bit difficult. I've only been privy to a little bit of this sort of communications between the property owners and the insurance company. But I did at some point early on hear that the insurance company had suggested that this was a act of God, that could trigger a force majeure clause in their coverage. This was a rainstorm where our records from the weather station at the airport indicate that it was a bit over 1 inch of rain. It was like 1.3 inches of rain. Well, if that constitutes an act of God in the state of Wisconsin, we all ought to be going to church more frequently, because that happens about, 6 times a year, maybe 8 times a year? It's just, frankly, that's just utter BS. Like a judge, if you try to make that argument in front of a judge, would dress you down.
Yeah.
So that's unfortunate. It does make me wonder, frankly, whether this insurance company is really taking this seriously at all. Now, unfortunately, the way things work with these is that insurance companies do sometimes tend to not take people seriously unless they're represented by counsel. Now, the tricky thing is, as much as I am sympathetic to this situation and would love to help, ultimately I can't take on individual homeowners as like a client, and I certainly can't do that in my capacity as a city attorney. So unfortunately, I think the best way for the claimants here to proceed would be to hire some attorneys and pursue this. Now, the fortunate thing is that insurance practice is one of the most common things. There's plenty of firms here in the city that can do that competently. But it is really, really disappointing to hear how the insurance company has handled this. And, when we are hiring contractors, even though it's a third party, they're doing work for us, and they have to set their own standards and everything. We want to know that they are backed up by insurance companies that, if push comes to shove, are going to actually be able to handle things. I mean, we're talking about a construction project with a price tag in the 7 figures, and these claims are, I believe, on the order of $20,000, somewhere around there. Yeah. So
Ours is a little more. We have quite a bit more damage because our basement is finished. So our total is about $28,000.
Yeah. 20, when you're talking heavy equipment, big construction projects, you can have a car crash with no injuries and have $28,000 worth of damage. I mean, quite easily, obviously. So again, it's just very disappointing, but it does remind me a little bit of one of the very first things that ever came to my attention when I was an alderperson way back when. If you remember, we had some kind of crazy rainstorms back in 2011, and the intersection at Division Street and Main Street flooded. And there's that house there on the north side of Main Street that's kind of cream and orange and has the little goat on top of the peak above the porch. So if you go by there, you'll notice that the driveway comes up the driveway apron, across the sidewalk, and then it goes below grade. And they have this basement level parking down there. You can go through a door directly into the basement. Well, the water in the street crested the height of the sidewalk, and it went down and filled that thing up, and it filled their basement shoulder deep. And the homeowner had a professional quality woodworking shop full of equipment down there. And this was before we had amended the FEMA maps. So they were in the floodplain and they had flood insurance. Well, the flood insurance didn't cover any of that because it only covers the structure and fixtures. And those were not considered to be fixtures, they're personal property. So he was on the hook for out-of-pocket costs to replace all that stuff. It covered, the water heater and the furnace and that, because those are considered fixtures. And he called me up, and I was pretty fresh out of law school, and I studied water law and, everything as relates to how liability is allocated for surface water runoff. And I knew as soon as he explained the situation to me, I was like, this is terrible. But ultimately, it's not the liability of the city of Stevens Point for that. And then I kind of spoke to him longer, and I realized he really just wants me to come over and take a look at this. And I did. I went over there. His house is beautiful. He was showing me everything that happened, telling me the story about it. But ultimately, in these types of situations, and I mean, that was one where it's just the regular city infrastructure. It wasn't some construction project or anything like that. I mean, there it was just like, well, with this amount of rain in this short a time, you are going to get an overwhelming of our stormwater system. Now here, obviously, I mean, you heard it from them. There's never been an issue, and it's because of the way things were configured during the construction. And, I mean, if you configure a construction site such that a 1.3-inch rainstorm is going to allow an infiltration of this into the stormwater system, well, that certainly sounds like it satisfies a negligence standard to me. So I do concur with the recommendation from our advisors here to deny the claim. But doggone it, I hope they get some attorneys and take it to this insurance company, because this is BS.
Well, how about waiting, because yours will be the next claim, so then, yeah, in your turn. Any other questions or comments on this one?
I do have a question. Oh, sorry. Thank you, President. And I don't know if staff can answer this, but I thought there was sort of a parallel incident that happened a year or two ago with a construction contractor doing road work around Minnesota and Clark and the St. Stephen Cemetery. And I thought that caused some damage to property owners. And I guess I'm just wondering, my question being, do staff know of a situation when a contractor's insurance company did accept responsibility for being liable and paid out to the city? Like, has that happened in recent memory?
So for those, I'm not sure that a claim was filed with the city, but I guess I'd maybe defer to Director Lemke and, Director Badoon as far as if you're aware of.
On that instance, I don't recall a claim either. There was flooding. That was a 24-inch water main that got pulled apart and just filled the whole neighborhood with water instantly. It was mostly contained to the trench because there was a very large trench open. And I'm sorry, but I don't recall if there was homeowner damage on that one. And what was the other part of that? Does this happen frequently?
Just if you have memory of a contractor actually accepting liability and paying out claims that have happened due to city projects or?
Not with any specificity, because that does end up being something that the homeowner and the contractor work out
Privately?
Yeah.
Okay.
One of the things that hasn't really been discussed here yet, just for the sake of context, is the fact that we don't dictate or control means and methods during a construction project. So if we say put this sewer in, they're going to dig a big hole and put the sewer in, right? There is always an effort to anticipate rainfall and say, how is this site, which is no longer a roadway, going to handle this rainfall? And it's a trick. But that's what happened, and that's why, had this road not been under construction, this wouldn't have happened, because we'd have had a road there. It would have collected the water in the storm sewers, taken it away. The water couldn't get to the storm sewers because there's a big hole. no curb and gutter. And the lowest point at the point which it was getting somewhere dangerous was the sewer manhole. Went through the top of the sewer manhole and found its way backwards into the homes. So that's really what happened, and that's why it's specifically a construction-related thing.
Any other questions, comments? Any more from the public? Hearing none, we have a motion on the floor to deny the claim.
We don't have a motion.
We don't have a motion yet? Committee, what's your wishes?
I make a motion to deny this claim.
Motion by Morrow to deny. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Keemer. All in favor of the motion signify by saying, of the motion to deny, would signify by saying aye.
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 And opposed would be no. And that passes. That brings us to the next item on the agenda, which is very similar in nature and occurred as a result of the same storm. Consideration of claim by Ray Cal's sewer backup in the basement. Committee, what are you, do you want to have a motion first, or let's go with comptroller first. Give us some background.
Sure. So basically, it's a very similar claim to the last one as far as what happened. You had construction on Maria Drive, and related to that construction, you had a sewer backup in the basement. The insurance company for the contractor initially denied the claim, and then the city did intervene and talk to the contractor and was at least able to get an offer to the homeowner, but not to the homeowner's satisfaction. So.
Okay. Committee, what are your wishes?
We're going to have the other person talk?
We can, yes, come on, give us some background.
Thank you. So my name is Mary Mortelfro, and I'm also the homeowner along with Ray Cal. So the water came into the basements because the manhole cover was not covered properly. It was left open. So all that water coming down the street with the gravel and the grit and everything into the sewer, and then just blew right into the basements. And so both of our basements, but our basement, the carpeting wet, the all 12 inches up the wall, or enough up the wall to 3 inches up the wall, and we have to do the 12-inch flood cut. All of that has to be taken care of. The construction company's insurance representative denied it without even having any information, claimed that there was and that was just the initial phone call. Well, it's going to take a long time for us to look into this, and we're probably just going to deny it anyway. Then that insurance person said that there was a swamp. His understanding was there was a swamp on the north side. And when all that water went into the swamp, and that was the reason for it coming into our basement. Well, there is no swamp there. There's some wetlands over by Spash, but there's no swamp. So, and my understanding was that, and any of the engineers the city engineers that came into our basement all said, yeah, that's because of that manhole cover. That's what is a result of that, of their responsibility. They didn't cover it. In my understanding is that when the city engineers met with the road construction company, it was like, yeah, we're going to take care of this. We're gonna take care of you. Don't worry about it. And I felt like that would happen. And then also I felt like the city would have our back, which doesn't seem to be the case. This is just the cleanup was over $11,000, and the remediation is over $16,000. So that's a lot of money, that we didn't plan on that because they didn't cover the manhole cover. It was not done properly. It was no fault of our own.
So they're offering you 11,000?
No, they're offering us 5,000.
Ooh. Okay.
With the NDA. And I guess also kind of looking forward, is this the kind of company that the city wants to continue to do business with? I mean, I guess you'll have to decide. So, that's all.
Okay. Thank you, Mary. Any other comments, questions?
Just want to add one additional little detail. Obviously, I don't do a lot of work in this type of area, but this is actually the first time in my entire career I've ever heard of an insurance company asking for an NDA with regards to just like a pretty run-of-the-mill insurance claim. Which, first of all, I mean, cat's out of the bag, huh? So I'm not sure exactly what sort of information would be, they'd be worried about having disclosed, but that just seems weird. So do with that what you will.
I agree. It's the first time I've ever heard of that as well. It's strange.
Yeah.
I think it seems fairly apparent that the contractor bears responsibility, and then I would think that that's why they have insurance. I mean, that seems to be the logical thing. I think, unfortunately, most insurance companies' first move is always to deny, and I'm hoping that with the appropriate pressure, they do the right thing. I'm very disappointed that they haven't taken responsibility already, and it seems fairly clear-cut to me. But that being said, I do think it's fairly obvious that they're the culpable party, the contractor, and so their insurance should be the one to cover.
I would hope that going forward, we might ask some more questions on the contractors, and especially this one that it is well known within our department heads of who this was and what they've put these people through.
I would agree. Motion, committee, what are your wishes?
I would move to deny the claim, but encourage them to seek legal representation.
You have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Motion by Alder Morrow and a second by Alder Kiemer. All in favor of denying the motion or denying the claim would signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. And opposed would be no. That brings us to, wow, we got a lot of stuff, don't we? Approval of additional funding for the Facade Improvement Grant Program. Comptroller.
Yes, and this is a request that came through from Community Development. Basically, we budget $100,000 for the Facade Grant Improvement Program every year. And with the Opera House project at the former Fox Theater, that project was approved for $114,473.98. So the request is to add an additional $14,473.98 to that program.
Okay, committee, what are your wishes?
I'll move approval.
Approval is moved by Alder Kiemer. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Alder Morrow. Comments, questions?
I guess a quick question. Thank you. I guess it seems like this is this in fact the only facade improvement this year, given that it's going to take the entire budget?
That's my understanding.
It's the only one that'll be paid out this year.
Okay,
Yeah.
so there may be others in following year. Okay, thank you.
That's the only one that's anticipated. I talked to Adam this afternoon, so.
Okay.
Yep. Any other questions? Questions or comments from the public?
I'm sorry to see this one immediately after what we just went through.
Yeah, I can hear you. all in favor of approving the additional funding for the facade improvement grant would signify by saying aye.
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 And opposed to be no. And that passes. Item number 10, approval of the fourth amendment to the development agreement for the Opera House LLC. Comptroller.
Yes, so this project has been moving forward. We do have a development agreement with them, but it's taken a little bit longer than was originally expected. So basically, they are requesting an extension of their current development agreement to go through 2026. So hopefully they'll be done before that, but just with an older building, sometimes you don't always know what you're going to find until you actually go in and work through it. So.
Okay. Committee, what are your wishes?
Motion to approve.
Morrow makes the motion to approve.
I'll second.
Second by Alder Broderick. Comments, questions? I remember the last time last two times, first they requested 6 months, and I can remember Director Karnowski suggesting to go for a full year, and they thought they'd do it in 6, and then they came back 6 months later and asked for another 6 months, and now we're looking at a couple of years. Please enlighten us.
So I think you hit it on the head. With an older building. Oh, sorry. First, I'm Greg Goki. I'm representing the Opera House LLC. I help oversee the overall project. We were optimistic in certain aspects. I think in other parts, historic structure. I think my favorite answer was the last time is every 50 feet we find something new that we have to take into consideration. One of the big pieces, and if you look at my write-up, we had to reinforce the eastern side of the building, interior, from the basement all the way up. One of the things that did was also create a lot of headspace. If anyone had ever toured the basement before, there wasn't headspace down there, so allow some additional headspace for us. But what it really did was reinforce the second floor. Second floor has this beautiful turn-of-the-century maple in it, but it wasn't built to really hold a lot of the weight that's going to end up there to be the venue that it'll end up being. That went in. The other part is the building's not square in any way, shape, or form, and there's been a lot of additional things that I added. The other part that happened is working with the state. We went through a lengthy review process prior to submitting plans, answering a lot of their questions, going back, getting a lot of additional data, so that hopefully when we now submit to state, it's a much faster process. We're anticipating less than 6 weeks, which then brings, as you can see, we're talking by May, having plans in hand now to move forward with the interior construction. Once that starts, it should not be the lengthy process, but getting to that point has been a struggle. But this is the point in which proper planning prevents performance problems in the future, so hopefully.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Goki from the committee?
Nope.
Nope? Okay. We do have a proposed development agreement in our packet within. Director Kittle, would you like to speak to the proposed development agreement at all?
Yeah, certainly can.
Thank you.
So this agreement that was brought forward to you is fairly similar to the last agreement that you had in front of you last year. So a lot of the same aspects. Some of the recitals were changed to just update. We're kind of out of that COVID delays. Still there, of course, remnants, but it's really not the primary factor anymore. So we left it in there, but we also added just the nature of the historic structure, what comes with it. A lot of hiccups come forward with the historic structure, and the building code is the building code. So trying to fit that in, with what is desired from the developers, it can be a little bit tricky. So just updated that a little bit, and really the meat and potatoes of it would be the amended section, which reads with 2 dates. One, the developer shall submit to the city conditionally approved plans from the state of Wisconsin DSPS by May 1st, 2025. And that's plans in hand. Again, that's the tough part. And then the second date in there is the developer shall obtain final occupancy no later than December 31st, 2026. The hope is that it does not take that long, but we wanted to give everyone a realistic timeline in anticipation that this would probably be the last amendment coming forward.
My question is, what happens if those timelines are not met?
Yeah, so, and our attorney may want to speak on this, but within the development agreement, the original agreement, 4.18 or something like that, it states that if any of these conditions are not met or timelines, requirements are not met, the city has the option to take back the parcel for $1 with no objections from the developer, I think is how it states. So we could get the development back for $1. However, it would then be on the city to
deal with it,
finish it, deal with it, find someone to deal with it. That could lead to nobody coming forward and the building going right back into decay as it was.
Okay.
So some risk with that.
Anyone on the committee have any questions for the director? Okay. All right. Thank you, sir. Is there a motion from the committee?
Motion to approve.
We have a motion.
Do you have a motion? All right. And then any other questions or comments from the committee? Oh, none? How about from the public? All right. Hearing none, we're ready to take a vote. All in favor of approving the agreement as presented would signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. And opposed would be no. And that passes. I think that brings us to, wow, the proposal for planning and design services for the Hoover Road signalized intersections. Director Badoon.
Really not much to add. Hopefully, otherwise understand the memo. This is just part of what was put into the capital budget for 2025, which is, if you remember, that is paid out of TID 8, this particular project. The scope of the work has kind of grown a little bit since we first started with AECom. We discovered a few things. One is we understood at the beginning that there were conduits already placed with the Hoover overpass. That turned out not to be the case. So they needed to go back and design in some conduits and other paths to do that, so they're looking at that as well. They've already run the warrant analysis and identified that, Industrial Park in Hoover should meet warrants as projected within the next 5 years, that at Coy it does not, so we're doing some additional engineering study to justify that. So there's been a couple of things to do that, as well as just as they get into more of the nuts and bolts of getting these two together, it's kind of expanded a little bit. So the process here is going to be a little different than the norm. The intent here is that actually the city will purchase the equipment, because much of it is going to take a long time to get, and then that'll allow them to put together the actual construction documents, and then we'll bid the work and installation next year. But we understand that some of the poles, especially for whatever reason it is with poles, we have the same thing with street lights with the poles, can take 12 to 18 months to get. So our hope is to get that. They already have a preliminary list together, to finalize that list here very shortly and place an order for the equipment, and then hopefully get a contractor in the spring, and we'll do what we can in spring and then get it wrapped up, hopefully still within 25, but at this point in time I can't actually say that it'll, which seems a little unusual, that it might actually not even happen in 25, but we're trying to get ahead of the game, understanding the lead time issues, and get some things ordered as soon as possible.
Okay. Any questions from the committee?
I'll move approval for the planning and design services for Hoover Road.
We have a motion to approve by Alder Kiemer. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Alder Schuda has a second. Questions or comments from the committee?
just have a quick question. Would payment for the design services to AECom, assuming they get this contract or some of the equipment, would that likely happen in 2025, or is it possible some of these payments might be due still this year?
So some of these, yeah, because they've already started, so I know as soon as we otherwise get them that, they'll probably have an invoice waiting
ready.
to be billed out to us for that. So yes, as far as the design services, there'll be payments yet in this calendar year. Corey says that's just fine, do it all.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. Well, one of the unique things with this project is we need to, at least enter into contracts before the TIF district expires in terms of its expenditure period, which would be May of 2025. So, but as long as we can sign on the dotted line for contracts, we should be okay. So.
Very good.
Any other questions?
Much needed project.
Yes.
Heard from many constituents regarding this one.
Yep. Any questions or comments from the public? Okay, hearing none, we can take a vote. All in favor of approving the contract for professional services for the planning and design of the Hoover Road signalized intersection would signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. And opposed would be no. And that's approved. We have approval of claims paid, which, again, still boggles me. Comptroller.
Yes, so we've got some large payments for road construction projects mainly. We also had a large payment for the solar shelter at Graholski Park. So it's kind of to the season for large road construction expenses. So.
Tis the season.
Any questions, comments from the committee? All right. Committee, what are your wishes?
Move approval.
We have approval, a motion to approve by Alder Broderick. Second by Alder Schuda. Any other comments? Hearing none. All in favor of approval of claims paid would signify by saying aye.
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 Aye, and opposed would be no. And that passes unanimously. Our next item on the agenda will be to adjourn into closed session pursuant to Wisconsin 19.85(1)(e) for deliberating or negotiating the purchase of public properties, the investment of public funds, or conducting other specified public business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session on the following: negotiating a development agreement in Tax Incremental Finance District number 5. We will be coming out of closed session for possible action on that above closed section item. So is there a motion to go into closed session?
Motion to go into closed session.
Alder Morrow, is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Alder Schuda. Is this a roll call?
Yes, it is a roll call.
Morrow?
Aye.
Schuda?
Aye.
Keemer?
Aye.
Broderick? Aye. Christensen?
Aye. And we're in closed session. Okay, we have now reconvened back into open session. We're ready to take some action. Committee, what are your wishes?
Motion. Go.
Motion to approve the discussed financing on the table.
Of the development?
The
Development, yep.
Yes.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the development agreement for financing as discussed in closed session, and a second by Alder Morrow. Motion by Alder Schuda. Any other questions? Hearing none, we'll take a vote. All in favor of that motion will signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, and opposed would be no. And that exhausts our agenda, and we shall adjourn at 8:04.